I never thought I'd be one of those people who experienced something truly terrifying. I always watched horror movies and thought, yeah, it's just a story. But what happened to me at Walmart one late night changed that forever. It was a regular Friday night. I was feeling lazy, didn't have much to do, and realized I was out of groceries. It was around 11 p.m., so I decided to head to Walmart, hoping to get in and out quickly. You know how Walmart is at night, right? Almost vacant and weirdly quiet, and the corridors are always half-stocked or in the process of being stocked. But it's perfect when you want to avoid crowds. When I walked in, the store felt colder than usual. It wasn't just the air conditioning, there was a strange chill in the air. I brushed it off and grabbed a cart, mentally going through my list. I was tired and just wanted to get home. As I walked down the first few aisles, it felt like very odd. Empty rows and the occasional faint beep of the self-checkout machines. But then, things started getting weird. As I made my way toward the back, near the dairy section, I felt like someone was following me. I kept hearing this faint squeak sound, like a cart being pushed slowly, deliberately. At first, I thought it was just an employee restocking the shelves, but when I turned around, the aisle was empty. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe it was my own cart making noise or just my tired mind playing tricks on me. I reached for a carton of milk and suddenly I heard a loud thud. It wasn't nearby but farther down the aisle, almost by the storage area. I froze for a second, but then curiosity got the better of me. I pushed my cart toward where the noise came from. That's when I noticed it. The back door to the storage area was slightly open, and something felt off. The lights overhead were flickering, casting weird shadows on the floor. I stared at the crack in the door and felt like something was watching me from the darkness beyond it. And then I saw it. A figure, just standing there. At first I thought it was a mannequin, or maybe an employee moving boxes. But this thing didn't move. It was tall and was hunched over. Its body was too long for its height. Suddenly, it shifted, just a tiny movement, but enough for me to know it was alive. My heart skipped a beat, and I quickly turned my cart around and walked away as fast as I could, without making it obvious I was freaking out. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I had just seen. Maybe it was an employee dressed oddly, or maybe I was just overthinking things. I tried to distract myself by continuing my shopping, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As I moved to the frozen food section, I peeked behind me again. That's when I saw it, the same figure. This time, it was standing at the end of the aisle, watching me. I quickly grabbed a few frozen dinners and started heading toward the front of the store, deciding I had enough groceries for the night. But no matter how fast I walked, that sound, the squeak of a cart, followed me. Every time I looked back, there was nothing, just empty aisles. The store seemed too quiet, even for this late hour. By the time I reached the checkout, I was practically jogging. I kept telling myself that I was being ridiculous. Maybe I was just tired, maybe I was imagining things. But then, as I was scanning my items, the lights above the registers started flickering. I looked up, confused, and the cashier, a young girl who looked equally freaked out, said, "It's been happening all night. I think the store's power is messed up." I paid as quickly as I could, grabbed my bags, and headed for the exit. But as I approached the sliding doors, they didn't open. I stood there waiting, waving my hands in front of the sensor, but nothing. The doors were stuck. That's when I heard it. A whisper, a faint sound from inside the store. I turned around, looking for the source of the sound, and that's when I saw it again. The figure was standing by the customer service desk, still, silent, and staring at me. It was closer this time. Its face was just a dark void. No eyes, no mouth, just emptiness. But the worst part? It was moving toward me, slow but steady, its long arms almost dragging on the floor. I panicked. I ran to the other set of sliding doors, praying they'd work, but they didn't work either. The whispering grew louder and more desperate, and I could hear the footsteps behind me. My heart started pounding. Then it knocked on the glass, hoping someone outside could see me. But the parking lot was empty. No one was there. Just as I was about to lose it, the doors finally opened with a loud sound. I ran outside, the cold night air hitting my face like a slap. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. Throwing my bags into the back seat, I jumped in, locked the doors, and started the engine. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I peeked back at the store. Through the glass doors, I could still see the figure standing there, watching me. It didn't move, didn't chasing me, but it was there, just waiting. I haven't been back to that Walmart since. I don't know what I saw that night. I've tried to forget it. But deep down, I know it wasn't normal. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't human. And it wasn't just my imagination. It was a regular Thursday night shift at Walmart, or at least that's what I thought when I walked in. I had been working here for about 6 months, mostly stocking shelves in the evening. The night shifts were long and quiet, fewer customers, less chaos, and I could just zone out while I did my work. But what happened that night still haunts me. It started like my normal shift. I clocked in at 10 p.m., grabbed my scanner, and headed to the back to see what aisles needed restocking. My supervisor, Joe, told me to start in the toy section since it was almost empty after a busy day. I didn't think much of it at the time, but looking back, I wish I had refused to go to that section. The toy section was always a bit eerie at night. The shelves lined with dolls, action figures, and stuffed animals looked lifeless, but it felt like they were watching me. It was quiet except for the hum of the store's air conditioning. I had restocked a few shelves and moved on to the stuffed animals when I noticed something strange. One of the teddy bears was out of place. I hadn't gotten to that shelf yet, but the teddy bear lying on the floor, face down. I picked it up, thinking someone had knocked it over earlier, as I placed it back on the shelf. Then, I turned around to scan the next item, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw the same bear fall on the floor. This time, it hadn't just slipped. It looked like it was thrown off the shelf. I stood there, staring at it for a second, trying to make sense of it. There was no one else around, and no way it could have fallen by itself. I was starting to feel uneasy, but I told myself it was probably nothing. I continued working, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The aisles seemed darker, the store quieter than usual. As I moved down the aisle, the scanner in my hand started glitching. It started beeping, but the screen remained blank. I hit it a few times, trying to get it to work, but then I heard it, a soft giggle. It sounded like a child laughing, faint but clear. I froze. Who would be laughing in an empty Walmart at this time? I turned around slowly, looking at the aisle, but there was no one. The laughter stopped suddenly. I tried to brush it off. Maybe I was just tired. But as I continued stocking the shelves, I kept hearing strange noises, soft whispers like someone was behind me, murmuring. Every time I turned around, there was no one. I was completely alone, or at least I thought I was. A few hours into my shift, around 2 a.m., things got worse. I had moved to the electronics section by then, trying to get as far away from the toy aisle as possible. The store was dead silent, but that silence was unsettling. As I reached to stock a DVD, the lights in the aisle flickered. It wasn't unusual for the lights to act up, but this time they went completely out for a few seconds. When they came back on, I wasn't alone. There was a figure at the end of the aisle, a woman. She was standing there just staring at me. Her clothes were old and tattered, and her skin was pale. I blinked, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, but she was still there. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. My throat was dry, and I felt like my legs were glued to the floor. The woman took a step toward me. My body finally kicked into gear, and I stumbled backward, knocking over a display of DVDs. I turned to run, but when I looked back, she was gone, completely vanished, like she had never been there. I was shaking now. I knew I needed to leave. Something wasn't right in the store. I made my way to the front, but the store seemed different. The aisles looked longer, and no matter how fast I walked, the exit never seemed to get closer. It felt like the store was stretching, trapping me inside. The whispers grew louder, more intense. They were surrounding me, taunting me. I finally reached the front doors, and they wouldn't open. They were automatic doors, but no matter how many times I waved my hands in front of the sensor, they stayed shut. Panic set in. I started banging on the glass, screaming for help, but the store was empty. No one could hear me. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her again, the woman. She was standing in one of the checkout lanes, her head tilted slightly, watching me. She smiled, a cold, eerie smile that sent shivers down my spine. Slowly, she began to walk toward me, her footsteps echoing in the empty store. I backed up and tried to think of a way out. I ran toward the employee break room, hoping I could hide. As I pushed the door open, I heard a loud crash behind me. The lights flickered again, and I knew she was getting closer. I rushed inside and slammed the door behind me, locking it. My hands were trembling. I didn't know what to do. I sat in the corner of the room, trying to calm myself down. But then I heard it. A soft knock on the door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I held my breath, hoping it would stop, but the knocking continued, growing louder and more insistent. I knew she was out there, and I knew there was no escape. That was the last thing I remember before blacking out. When I woke up, it was morning. I was lying on the floor of the break room, drenched in sweat. The store was bright again, bustling with customers, as if nothing had happened. I stumbled to my feet and rushed to the front. Joe was there, looking at me like I was crazy when I tried to explain what had happened. But he just shook his head and said, "You must have had a bad dream." I wish I could believe him, but I know what I saw that night, and I've never stepped foot in that Walmart again. I've always loved late-night trips to Walmart. You know, when the store is almost empty, and you can wander through the aisles without people bumping into you every 5 seconds. It's peaceful, almost relaxing. At least that's what I thought until that one night. It started out like a normal evening. I was out of groceries, and after a long day of work, I planned a late-night run to Walmart would be the perfect time to stock up on what I needed. It was around 11:30 p.m. when I pulled into the parking lot. The store was almost empty, just how I liked it. I parked close to the entrance and walked in, my mind already running through my shopping list. The store was quiet, with only a few employees and maybe a couple of customers scattered throughout the aisles. I grabbed a cart and headed to the grocery section. But then, as I made my way down the cereal aisle, I felt it. That sensation of being watched. You know the feeling, like someone's eyes are staring into the back of your head, but when you turn around, there's no one there. I peeked over my shoulder, but the aisle was empty. I shook it off, telling myself I was just being tired, but that uneasy feeling stuck with me. As I moved to the next aisle, I heard something. At first, it was a faint whisper sound. I froze, trying to listen closely. Then I heard it again, soft and barely audible. Someone was whispering my name. John. The voice was low and weird, like it was coming from right behind me. I turned around, but again, there was no one there. The aisle was completely empty. My heart started pounding in my chest. I stood there for a moment, scanning the empty aisles, telling myself I was imagining things. But deep down, I knew something was off. I tried to brush it off again, grabbing a few more items and moving toward the frozen food section. As I reached for a pack of frozen vegetables, I felt it again, that cold, unshakable feeling of being watched. I turned around slowly, my eyes scanning the area, and that's when I saw it. At the end of the aisle near the cleaning supplies, there was a figure standing there. It was far away, too far to see clearly, but I could make out its shape. It was tall, much taller than any normal person, and it just stood there, completely still, staring at me. I blinked, and in that split second, the figure was gone. I stood there, frozen in place. I wasn't imagining things. Someone or something was in the store with me. I thought of leaving the store, but my mind was curious. I wanted to know what was happening, even though every instinct told me to run. I slowly pushed my cart toward the checkout. As I walked through the aisles, I kept peeking over my shoulder, expecting to see the figure again, but it never reappeared. The store felt colder, darker, even though the lights were still as bright as ever. I could feel the air growing heavier, like something was closing in around me. At the self-checkout, I quickly scanned my items, eager to get out of there. But the machine kept freezing, and I couldn't get my card to work. I looked around, frustrated, and that's when I saw it again. This time the figure was closer, standing just a few aisles away. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't make out its face, but I could feel its eyes on me, watching, waiting. I left my groceries and ran for the door. As I sprinted toward the exit, I could hear footsteps behind me, slow, heavy footsteps that echoed through the store. But when I looked back, there was no one there. The doors slid open, and I ran to my car. Once I got inside, I locked the doors and looked back at the store. For a moment, everything seemed normal. The bright lights, the empty parking lot, just like a normal night. But as I was about to pull out, I saw it again. The figure was standing just outside the entrance, completely still, watching me. I couldn't move. I couldn't look away. It was like it was daring me to come back, to face whatever it was. I hit the gas and drove out of the parking lot, not stopping until I was miles away. Even then, I could still feel its presence, like it was with me, following me. I haven't been back to that Walmart since. I've tried to tell myself it was all in my head, that I was just tired or stressed. But deep down, I know the truth. Something was there that night, something dark and unexplainable. And the worst part? I know it's still out there, waiting for the next person to wander in late at night, thinking it's just another peaceful shopping trip. But trust me, if you ever find yourself in an empty Walmart late at night and you feel like someone's watching you, leave. Because once you see it, there's no going back. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these true, terrifying stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss scary stories that will keep you up at night.